Good morning and good afternoon. Let's get started. Welcome. So today's webinar is all about bringing together data architecture, data governance, and data warehouse automation. And we're going to talk about two of our best-selling products, ER Studio and WhereScape, and how the two products work together. So my name's Jamie Knowles. I'm the product manager for ER Studio. I was going to be joined today by Simon Spring, but apparently he's got man flu, and he's apparently got the long man flu version of it. So it'll just be me today. Okay, let's get started. So let me introduce, first of all, ER Studio. What is ER Studio? So it's a tool for data architects to be able to design and document data assets. So it uses data models. So we create conceptual, logical, and physical data models to model information, and then use those information models then to design and document data assets. It's an enterprise tool, so we can support many data assets. We've got some customers with many thousands of data assets and many hundreds of data architects all working together to design and document those data assets. And our mission is to keep up to date with all the latest technologies of databases. We're also starting to support newer technologies like NoSQL platforms, file-based formats, etc. So that's the core mission of ER Studio. And our secondary mission is to connect that band of data architects with other tribes and tools around the organization. So we're seeing other groups of people doing things with data and data assets. We've got our newer data governance teams. So generally under the chief data officer, sometimes part of IT, sometimes part of the business. And we've also got our data analytics teams looking after the data warehouse and BI and data analytics. And what we really want to do is to bring all these different groups together, these tools and the people, and form a single company-wide data ecosystem. And wherever you go in that ecosystem, you're going to get the same sort of answers. Everybody is contributing to this pool of knowledge about the data and information of the organization. So that's the ER Studio mission. As a product, there's really two parts to it. There's the data architect part. So this is a desktop client tool. We're going to have a look at it later on, where our data modelers and data architects are creating these conceptual, logical, and physical models. They're doing code generation. They're moving through the change process of operational data assets. They can connect data architect to a central team server product, and team server has a central repository, so we can share models, version those models, check them in, check them out. Then there's team server core, which is a web-based component, and this sort of opens up all this sort of useful knowledge around information and data to a much wider audience of people. So we've got software engineers that might be programming applications around those databases, the database administrators, and then over to the data stewards in the data governance team, etc. So the team server core product, again web-based, allows you to publish the data models and also build a business glossary and a data catalog. And we're going to come on to why that's important later on. WhereScape, our second product, is a tool for data warehouse architects. And these are the guys that are going to be designing, building, and operating the data warehouse. And I'm going to explain some of these bullet points in a moment, but it's very much metadata driven. Automations are policy based, so you gather some metadata about the source data asset, and these policies will then drive automations that then create the static regions of the data warehouse and the data pipelines and make it all happen. Let's move on to the next slide, and then we can explain a little bit more about how things work. So again, WhereScape has got different components. We've got our 3D component, which you're going to look at later on, that provides the modeling aspect to the data warehouse. And then WhereScape Red that actually does all the sort of the work of building and running the data warehouse. And we provide various packages of these two components. So Data Vault Express package provides sort of a light component package of these components to support the Data Vault schema. And as you know, there's various different schema systems for data warehouses. So we can support standard third normal form models, star schemas, and Data Vault. And Data Vault especially lends itself nicely to automation. So a lot of that laborious work is taken away using automation. So the mission. So WhereScape's a tool for data warehouse architects to automate the design, creation, operation of a data warehouse. And the benefits of doing this are pretty dramatic, especially with laborious schemas like Data Vault. We can dramatically reduce costs of creating and running the warehouse. And through what we're going to see in a moment, and again, using these policies of the automations from that metadata, we can increase security in the warehouse and have repeatable behaviors. And again, we've got a mission here to be able to connect the data warehouse architects with the broader data architecture and data governance teams and produce that continuous data ecosystem. So looking at the analytics environment itself. So over on the left-hand side, we've got our data sources. So we've got applications with their databases, we've got information in all sorts of forms. And over on the right, we've got our consumers of data, running BI tools, analytics tools, etc. And in the middle, we want to get data to them through the data warehouse. Now, the data warehouse can have various regions within it. So these are databases. The green lines represent data movements, which might be ELT or ETL tools. Now, a lot of you out there are already using ER Studio. Some of you are actually designing the data warehouse manually using ER Studio. So you'll be creating data models of the different regions of the warehouse. You'll be then using ELT tools, stored procedures in the database to move the data around, doing all of that work manually. So WhereScape, the way it works is, so with our WhereScape 3D products that we're going to look at later on, we point it to the source data asset and we reverse engineer it and create a model of that. And then the data warehouse architect will then go and gather useful metadata about that asset. And in parallel, they'll then decide on these policies for automations that take the metadata that's been gathered and then create the static regions in the warehouse. They'll actually generate the DDL code and deploy that to the database using WhereScape Red. And it'll also create ELT operations via stored procedures that move the data through the warehouse. So it'll automate the creation of the static and the data movements for the entire warehouse, all automatically. Now, what we're trying to do is sort of extend the experience. So it's great having automation. There's a number of challenges there. The first one is, well, great, I've got lots and lots of possible data assets that I want to include in the warehouse. So I need to understand, what do they mean? And that curation exercise we want to try and help. So we're going to introduce the data catalog. We're going to have a business glossary in business-friendly language that people can come and browse and find the information that they're looking for, and then say, okay, well, now that's telling me that in my data dictionary here, I've got the data I'm looking for in these three data assets. And then when I find the data asset that I'm looking for, then WhereScape takes over and does the automation. What we also want to do is to include the data governance aspects of this. So if we know the policies and the rules that applies to the information itself stored in the business glossary by our data stewards, our data governance team, we want to use that metadata to drive security in the warehouse. So again, WhereScape can do all that. It can apply data masking profiles, allocating tables to security schemas and users. So bringing together all these different worlds. So let's look at the models. So if I reverse engineer a database and bring in the technical metadata, then this is really the sort of image that I see. I'm going to see tables in the database, and I'm going to see columns for those tables. At this point, understanding what do they mean is a bit of a challenge. C_RTNG, what is that? We don't know. This is where our data models can really help. Now with ER Studio, our data architects who are probably designing these things in the first place, the sort of process that they're going to go through is that they'll create a logical data model. So this little picture on the bottom left. So we've got a number of entities there, company, customer, etc. Customer has some attributes, credit rating score. So generally the process in ER Studio, the data architects working with the stakeholders of the database, developers, business analysts, etc., will agree the logical data model. This is the information that we want to put into our database. And in ER Studio, you can then say, okay, I now want to create a SQL Server or a Snowflake or an Oracle database from it, and using various rules, it will then generate a physical model of that database. And then from the physical model of the database, I can press another button, and out comes the DDL code that then creates the database. So as the data architects go through this process, they're gathering lots of useful business metadata, business names, descriptions, various useful properties of the data and the information in the model. Now, if we extend this model again, and we introduce the concept of the business glossary. So we've got another team of people, the data governance team, so lots of data stewards, who are building models of information using business terms. We might arrange those business terms into an ontology, these relationships here. So I can see in my logical model, I've got credit rating score. That is over here in my physical database as a column called C_RTNG. And then up here in the business glossary, I've got a business term credit rating score. Now, the data governance team have got the mission to provide those requirements on the data to help them govern. So there might be useful properties like PII flags. Is this piece of information personally identifiable? Is it sensitive data? So credit rating score, as you can imagine, is pretty sensitive. So we're going to have all sorts of flags against it in the model. So overall, with a combination of ER Studio and maybe our data governance tools, and we'll see this later on, tools like Calibra or Informatica, we're going to build this overall model, capturing lots of useful business metadata about our possible data sources for our warehouse. So the idea is, with our integration, is we want to be able to send to WhereScape a physical model of the data source, and then bring in all this useful metadata that we've gathered from the logical model. We might also bring in useful metadata from the business terms and send all that as a marked up model to WhereScape 3D. So if you remember, I said the data warehouse architect using 3D usually points the tool to the database and just gets that physical model that you can see on the right. So they've got to spend a lot of time gathering all this useful business metadata. We've got all this in this model, and we can really help. So what we're going to do is collapse all that information and mark up the physical data model and send that all to WhereScape 3D, along with all of the requirements for security on the data provided by the data governance team. Some customers might not have a logical data model at all. They might just have a physical model attached to business terms. But again, we can pull all that useful metadata from the business terms, from Calibra or Informatica or ER Studio, and send it to WhereScape. So that's our mission. Let's kind of have a bit of a demo. Let's go and see it. So let me start off in ER Studio land. I'm going to start sort of the day in the life of the data architect. So this is ER Studio Data Architect, the thick client tool. And I'm designing an HR system. So here's all the physical tables that we're looking at. And I might start from this, which is my business friendly logical data model. So I've got an entity here called employee, and I've got all the attributes of employee, and I might have mapped all of my entities and attributes to business terms over in the business glossary and data governance land. So that's the model that I'm building in Data Architect. Again, I can generate the physical from the logical, and then from the physical generate code. And this represents potentially my source data asset. So now let's move across to the sort of the journey of one of our users that's now looking for data. So I'm a business user. I want some data, and I want to get it from the warehouse. I want to shop for that data. So this is ER Studio Team Server. So I can come to my business glossary and I can start browsing. So I'm going to start with the term party, a very generic term. And I can go and look at the business term party, and I can read the definition of it. Yep, this is the information I'm looking for. I want to get a bit more specific though. I want to drill down through a taxonomy of party. So party can have party role or a party type, party role. So party could be a competitor, customer, or employee. Well, what I'm looking for is, I'm in my database, in my warehouse, I wanted to gather salary information of employees. So great, I'm heading in the right direction. So let's go off to employee. So I've now found a business term called employee. Yep, that's definitely what I'm looking for. So show me what's related to an employee. Again, this is all business friendly, not technical at any point here. So I can see that an employee performs a process, holds an employment contract. Useful information, but it's not what I'm looking for. I want to see specific attributes of an employee. So an employee can have an employee number, an employee type. Oh, look, salary information. That's what I'm looking for, salary. So I've now arrived at the specific piece of information that I'm looking for. Now you'll notice as I've been going through the business glossary, there's a little open in Calibra button here. I could have done exactly the same journey that we're looking at in Calibra. So Calibra is a data governance tool, one of the most popular ones on the market, where data stewards will be spending their life building up these business glossaries, providing the official definitions of these pieces of information. What we're really interested in here is useful metadata. So we've got sensitivity level is critical, personally identifiable information flag switched on. Okay, so this is important stuff. Now, next thing I want to do is to find out, well, have I got any models? Have I got any data assets that contain salary information? So what I can do now is go back to Team Server and say, well, Team Server's got a lot of really useful data models here. And I've got two in particular. There's my corporate logical data model. We can talk about that another day. But I've got a specific database here, my HR database. I've got a logical model and a physical model. So I've got a table in this physical model that's called EMP and a column called SLRY, which is an instance of salary. It's telling me here, great. So this looks like the database that I want to put into WhereScape. So I can double click on that data model. Again, I could go and look at this over in Calibra. Everything I'm doing in Team Server could be done in Calibra. We've got a synchronization component. So ER Studio is constantly synchronizing with Calibra, publishing models across and up to date. But I'm doing the journey in Team Server. So there's all the tables in this database. So what I want to do now is get this into WhereScape 3D and continue the journey. So I can hit export to WhereScape. Now at the moment, this is the start of a journey with ER Studio and WhereScape working together. So at the moment, I've downloaded a file, an XML file. And the next part of the demonstration, I'm going to hop across. I could send this file to my WhereScape user. In the future, we're going to have tighter integration, so I can actually do all this sort of work within WhereScape itself. But for now, I'm going to push a file across. So if I now hop across to the next part, go back to my machine. Now, here is WhereScape 3D. So I'm going to start off with a simple demo just showing the imports, and then I'm going to show you a little video of one of my colleagues just taking the journey further and actually creating the data warehouse. So what I can do here, I've got a model in my training database. I can add a version number 5. Okay. And then for version number 5, import from an external format, and just get this one right. I think it's that one there. Oops. Double click, and now it's importing it. And now if I was to point WhereScape 3D directly to the database, this is the sort of view that I'll get. So I'll get sort of all the technical data. But if I now, presto, by Jingo, open up a diagram, it's now giving me a logical view. This is a lot more business friendly. So now, as a data warehouse architect, I've got to do a number of things. I've got to decide, well, which of these tables do I want to include in the warehouse? So start the curation process. So having all this logical data in business language is going to help me a lot. Now, if I open up employee, then you can see all that useful business metadata that ER Studio has come through to WhereScape 3D. So I can see the label, there's employee, there's a description of the table, very good. Here's all the columns. So SLRY, if we remember, was our salary column, and there's a comment for it. And not only that, if I go to my extended properties and scroll down, I've now got lots of really useful metadata. So personally identifiable information is true, and sensitivity level equals critical. So that's come from Team Server, but it came originally from Calibra. So again, Team Server and Calibra working together. So all of this extra metadata about the data asset has been brought through to me as the data warehouse architect, ready to help me start both the curation exercise, and then so normally I'd have to add all this metadata in by hand. So I'm saving a lot of time. And also these PII sensitivity flags, whatever properties I want from Calibra, because it's all configurable. I can bring through, and that will be used to drive all the automations. So I'm going to pause now, and then I'm going to hand over to a demo. Now, hopefully this is going to work, and I'm going to play this video here, and hopefully the audio will be okay.
Let us now see how we can use that ER Studio model and further design and build our data warehouse. So within WhereScape 3D, we can import that model into one of our source models. The prerequisite would be to set up the connection where that data is housed. This is in order to fully automate the process of loading the data from that source. What I will do is I will import the model into my HR source. I already created the HR source, but I will create a new version for this demonstration and just link it to that connection I've set up. But I'm not going to discover the source because I'd like to import it from ER Studio. I can then use a workflow button to import from ER Studio model. That is the model that I am interested in. So now I can see all of the information that has been sent from ER Studio together with the extended properties that could be of use in designing and building our data warehouse. Now, not all of this information might be useful, but what we will focus on today is specifically the personally identifiable information as well as the sensitivity level. So in order to make that more visible, I'm going to just run a model conversion rule to highlight the sensitive information. Now you will see all of the sensitive fields deemed as personally identifiable or critical or some sort of sensitivity on them as red. Now I would like to manage them in a different way in my data warehouse. You can also do some other things. So let's say I want to exclude some tables. I am not interested in, for example, this external agency table. I can tag it to be ignored in my data warehouse. And let's take employee skills matrix as well. In this demo, I want to demonstrate how you can generate an ODS model, which either tracks history or does not track history. So I would now like to select some fields that I deem is not important to track history on. So let's say the name of the department. And let's just take some other arbitrary field like agency ID. So you can now go through this process iteratively by either adding some additional metadata, ignoring some tables, or giving any other attributes that might be useful in generating the ODS model. Now, I am showing an ODS model, but this could very well be a demonstration on how you maybe generate dimensions and facts or a data vault, whatever the architecture is of your data warehouse. Next step would be to use our pre-built model conversion rules to generate the ODS. So this will run through model conversion rules to turn this third normal form or ERD type diagram and metadata into an ODS model. It will also add some security items based on the sensitivity fields and some housekeeping rules, taking away some unnecessary metadata. It's going to go with defaults for now. So now I can see that in this demo model, there was load tables generated. So this is the one-to-one mapping of the source data into my target platform. This is the physical model that will be built. Still target agnostic at this point. This is the ODS layer, so the data store objects, either non-historized, the lighter color, or historized. So in the historized ones, you will see an end date and a current flag, and then views on top of that for my current views. So this will just take the latest record from my historized views. Now I can either deploy to different targets. For this demo, I'm going to deploy to a Microsoft SQL target. This will invoke our admin tool. I have to select the target repository for the metadata. This will now do a comparison with my metadata associated with my target platform. All is new at this stage. I'm going to take the defaults. So now if I refresh my metadata within our builder tool, you will see the ERS generated ODS has now been created. So these are all the objects that has been modeled, imported from ER Studio, and further modeled in WhereScape 3D. I can take this and create a job from it. I'm going to take the default settings. This is proposing a lineage based on the model designed in 3D. I'm just going to say, okay, I'm happy with that proposed lineage. And I'm going to kick off the job that will start loading my data warehouse. So what has happened in the last couple of minutes? We've taken the model, we've imported it, enhanced it a bit, generated the ODS layer, and what's happened now in the background, it's created the DDL, creating these objects in my target platform. It has generated procedures to update the data, all based on templates. It has figured out what the lineage is, in other words, the dependencies, in which order it needs to load. And now I'm running this job that actually will load the data warehouse for me. While that is running, I can also show you the documentation. So we generate the documentation based on the metadata automatically. So we can create the documentation. WhereScape produces two flavors of the documentation, a user level documentation, as well as a technical documentation. The technical documentation is what I'm more interested in. This will show me all of the update procedures, all of the technical names, all of the lineage. I can go to the procedures, look at the actual code that was generated. So this is the procedure that was generated in the background to update my historized data store object. Maybe something else interesting is based on the sensitivity level, I could tell my target platform via a template how it needs to handle those security measures. So in this instance, what we did was the fields marked as sensitive. I was able to create a masking policy or a masking over those fields, and only users with the appropriate privileges would be able to see the data in these columns that were marked as sensitive. Just to go back to 3D and show you what we did, we imported the model, we tagged the metadata appropriately, some additional metadata for history tracking, excluded certain tables. Another option for generating the ODS for the security measures within the ODS So you'll see the default is the masking option. What we could have done, we could create some secure views on top of the ODS. This will simply exclude the sensitive fields. And then these secure views will be put into a separate schema where users that have the appropriate privileges can have access. For the data store objects, then it would only be for users with elevated privileges. Now, this is just two options. You can write your own rules based on your own maybe security architecture that you would like and how you want to manage your secure or personally identifiable fields. It's really up to you. Additional thing, if I go to my model, my newly generated model here, you'll see in the list of all objects, now there has been some additional secure views created based on that setting that I've selected. But you'll also see is I could have deployed it to Snowflake, and Snowflake would perhaps have a slightly different way of masking the data. You need to create a masking policy, but the altered table and column statements are quite similar. So in that case, you would have a template that would handle the security in the appropriate way. So really, you can take a model from ER Studio, and within a couple of minutes, by simply adding or enhancing some of the metadata, you can generate it to your target platform and load it for your end users to view the data.
Very good. Okay. So the eagle-eyed amongst you might have spotted me holding the speaker up there. So my colleague, when he abandoned me, I had to act fast and come up with a solution. So apologies for that. Hopefully the audio was okay for everybody. So to summarize what we've seen then, so we started off in Team Server as a consumer of data, browsing for information, looking through the business glossary. Did that in Team Server. We could have also done it in Calibra. We found the database that we're looking for, and we press a button to export a marked up model to send to WhereScape 3D, including lots of useful business metadata, help with curation, and security requirements and parameters from the data governance team. So once we exported it and imported it into WhereScape 3D, we could then view the model, make decisions on it, and what to include. And then we ran those automations which built the warehouse for us. And then in the final user layers included secure views. And all along the way, we also created all those ELT pipelines to actually move the data. So quite a lot happened there. Lots of benefits. So there's two groups of you out there. So there's those of you using WhereScape. So the benefits to you as WhereScape users is it's going to reduce time taken to build the warehouse. So previously, where you'd point WhereScape 3D to the data asset, and you'd have to go and gather all of that useful business metadata. You're going to get all that for you. The data architects have done their job. They've already done the documentation. If the data governance team have done their job, and great, you've got now all that wonderful metadata which will drive those automations in WhereScape. So it's going to reduce the time. It's also going to improve the security in the data warehouse, ensure that that the requirements set by the data governance team is enacted, so it's actionable in the warehouse. For those of you who are using ER Studio and manually creating designs of data warehouses, then hopefully you've seen how WhereScape can sort of take a lot of that work away. All that work to design all the different regions of the warehouse, WhereScape's going to do all that automatically. Again, saving lots and lots of time. It's going to produce all the data engineering aspects as well. And then once it's done all that, it's going to give you all the documentation and the lineage of where the data came from. So again, these two tools working together, lots and lots of benefit, reducing massive amounts of time and improving security. Okay, that's pretty much all I wanted to say on the topic. So we've done that in a record time. I'm just going to go and see if I can find questions now. So if any of you have got questions, then put them into the questions box in the GoToWebinar. There's a question there on supply chain security. That's not an area that I know a lot about. So I think the goal is to be able to mitigate the risks of working with other organizations as part of the supply chain. So I guess, I mean, there's going to be flags put against the model. So you're going to have flags against the information as a whole in the business glossary. So specifying that things like salary information is sensitive in PII. We can also, as we're modeling each individual data asset that we've got in the catalog, we can put specific flags against that. So we could say that this is external data. We could put data retention periods and all those sorts of requirements. Again, all of this is just useful metadata that the data warehouse architects in WhereScape can use to drive those automations. Hopefully I answered your question there. Okay, just looking through, see if there's any more questions. Some questions on, so we've talked about Calibra. I think I mentioned some of the other tools. There's requests, can you do a similar sort of thing with Informatica, Microsoft Purview? So ER Studio right now connects to Calibra. The code that we built for Calibra, we're going to do exactly the same thing again, reuse that code for Informatica Axon and Microsoft Purview. So again, whatever tool your data stewards is working in the data governance team, we want to connect that to our data architects and our data warehouse architects. If there's any follow-on questions from this, then drop us an email at sales@idera.com, put the name of the webinar there. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you've got, talk more about this stuff. We can do demos. We've got lots of other materials out there, so feel free to send us questions. Right, another one coming in. We are heavy ER Studio users with large models. Is it possible to upload metadata from Excel, PII data, PHI data after setting up? Yeah, absolutely. So Team Server has got a CSV import mechanism. So if you're not using Calibra or any of those other tools, you're just using ER Studio Team Server to manage your business glossary, we can import from CSV for that sort of thing against the business glossary. If you want to import metadata against the data models, then Data Architect itself has got sort of macroing features, and there's various sort of Excel import mechanisms. If you guys want to talk about that, we can set up a follow-on call, get one of our engineers to sort of talk through the different options there. Yeah, anything on supply chain security, again, drop us an email, love to talk to you. Right, hopefully that is everyone is happy with that, and we'll conclude the session. Look forward to speaking to you all soon. Thanks very much.